Hi, and welcome to Ruby's Ask Me Anything office hours. My name is Dan Marek. I'm Director of Plant-Based Development here at Ruby. And each week we do one of these series, which is an office hours where our students can ask us anything culinary related. And this is actually the last one for the year. So thank you for joining us throughout the year on all these events. We've had a slew of wonderful questions and just great conversations with our students. And we encourage you to join us again next year for these as well, because they are quite a fun event where you can ask us any question you have about culinary related items, and we will give you the answers to them if we know them. If we don't, we'll gladly get back to you later. Now, if this is your first time joining, you can always just look up on the top right next to the video on the Ruby platform and add the question in the box that says add question here. Just type out your question, hit the black add button, and our moderator will make sure that it is culinary related and that it is towards our topic, and he will add it to our queue on the right hand side. If there is one of the questions you'd like to hear right away, you can always hit the heart icon on the right side of one of those questions and it'll bring it up towards the top. So if you only have a couple minutes to be able to watch, you might want to hit that heart icon to be able to move that question up a little higher. These are always recorded as well, so you will be able to find them later in the search option on the top of your Ruby platform. Just type in either live events, so you can go to the live event. You can actually click on the live event icon as well too. And you can actually search some of the questions after, usually give us a couple of weeks to be able to get them entered in, get all the words and everything entered in. And you'll be able to search them afterward too. So feel free to visit some of our older office hours. We've been doing them for a number of years. So definitely check into some of the older questions that we've had if you've got some questions about some other things and you don't have the time to be able to watch the entire session. And Patrick is telling me it doesn't take a couple weeks apparently, so it's probably pretty instantaneous for him. So with that being said, let's jump into our first question here. The first question is actually from Maria. How do you propose planning a week's meal plan, being cognizant of waste, utilizing ingredients responsibility, and yet creating tasty, nutritious dishes? So, Maria, I think this is something that becomes kind of ingrained in your cooking style. So, it is something that you definitely want to kind of work on a meal by meal basis, and then kind of go up to, say, a week by week basis. Just starting off with your meal plan is great. Look at your meal plan for the week and kind of look at ingredients that you can use in multiple dishes. Now, this could be something as simple as like rice, right? So you're going to be using rice in two different dishes. To be able to go shopping, that's going to save you on budget because you're not buying multiple kinds of things. And but you also, like, where that really comes into effect is in vegetables, right? So things that will go bad over time. So if you're going to be using something, that's more perishable, like not onions or something, but say tomatoes, right? So you're going to be using tomatoes in an Italian dish on Monday, and you're going to be using tomatoes in a dish on Wednesday, say it's a salad, and then on Friday you're going to take all your ingredients that are left over and put them into a soup, and those tomatoes can go into that as well too. So there you are, using three dishes that have tomatoes in them, and you're actually able to portion them out on each one of those. Now, you'll be able to keep the tomatoes that you haven't used, put them in the refrigerator, then pull them back out, bring them to room temperature for best quality taste as well too, before you start putting them into things. And then you can, portion them out as needed, and that way you have less items on your grocery list and less waste on that as well. Another way to be able to look at that is exactly what I just said a second ago. Make a soup, right? Do a soup at the end of the week. So if you did all your shopping and you're like, I had big plans to make meals from home every single night, and you only did maybe 2 or 3 nights instead of the 5 or 7 nights, right? So you basically can look at what you have in the fridge and make a soup out of all kinds of ingredients that are in there. It's a great way to be able to utilize ingredients that maybe not carry into the next week, but aren't bad yet, right? So the best way to kind of do that is look at what recipe items you have, look at what ingredients you have, and then look up a recipe to correspond with something like that. So if it's something like, I've had this butternut squash for a couple of weeks and it's time to be able to utilize that before it goes bad, You can just look up something like a butternut squash recipe, like a soup, or roasting or something like that. But and roasting it to be able to put into your soup. So great way to be able to utilize some things that you haven't used throughout the rest of the week. Now, another tip I'd like to add on to this is create a composting. Area. So even if you don't have like a big yard or something like that, you can still compost like within your house as well too. They have composting machines that you can have inside the house. If you do have a yard of some sort, I highly recommend composting to be able to utilize scraps. Probably the most like just this week, I made a vegetable stock from just scraps. So every week, I will save my scraps. If I'm cutting an onion, I'll save the peel, and if I'm, peeling carrots and cutting off the ends, I'll put those into like a big gallon, baggie, a freezer baggie, and put all those in there. And I'll put mushroom stems and, the cores of peppers, all kinds of things like that. Just nothing that's too aromatic. So I'm not going to put like garlic into it. I'm not going to put herbs into it or stuff like that. But kind of those like simpler items like that. Now, once that bag fills up, and then I'll make a stock. So that usually takes me to 1 to 2 weeks to be able to fill up that bag to get it so I can fill like a big sized pot and make two pretty large jars of vegetable stock that I use continually. And especially during soup season, I make sure to have that kind of rolling constantly. Now, when I'm done with that, I'll basically put the whole thing in a pot and then cover it with water and then cook it. I'll bring it up to a boil and then down to a simmer for at least an hour, and you get this really nice kind of brown liquid that's coming from it. And then you drain off the stock and keep just the stock after you've drained it out. Um, then you have all this kind of leftover vegetable, and everybody's like, what do you do with this? How can we make it? It's actually best for compost. That's I just made it this week, and it was like, okay, in Wisconsin we just had 12 inches of snow. It's a little hard to compost, but I still put it on top of my compost pile. It's going to freeze, but when it thaws out, it's going to compost really nice, and I can use it in my garden beds. If you don't have a garden, that's okay. You can even use that compost for potting soil, just to be able to put in pots and grow fresh herbs in your windowsill. So those are a couple ways to be able to be cognizant of waste and utilizing your ingredients responsibly. Those are a few different ways that I, use really continuously. But like I said at the beginning, it really, you have to kind of get into the rhythm of doing that. If you kind of jump right in and try doing everything right away, you're probably going to get a little frustrated and be like, I can't really do this. But take one step at a time. Maybe the composting thing's not ready for you right away, but there's a lot of organizations locally that will take compost as well too. In some areas, I've even seen people that have curbside compost pickup, which is pretty amazing. When I live in Austin, Texas, we had that. That was pretty plant forward. If you, if I don't, if I put the joke in there, but anyways, so that's probably the best way to be able to be cognizant of your waste that I can think of. We also do offer a course from the James Beard Foundation on waste and responsibility on that too, so you might want to take a look for that too. All right, our next question is from Lisa. What are your thoughts on titanium cutting boards? Will they ruin your knives? Yeah, in fact, a lot of people will do like the metal or glass cutting boards. I am not a big fan of those at all, because what happens is they start to dull your knife. So if like my hand right here was the knife, let me get the right angle. Let's say this is the blade going this way. Now the tip of that blade is going to be hitting that cutting board. And as it hits something that's harder than the steel and you're doing titanium, it's going to start bending over the end of your blade. Now it's not going to be that dramatic, but it's going to be very microscopic as it does that. But as it does that, it's going to make it so your knife gets duller on the end of it, because the very end of it is getting bent over. You, of course, can just use a honing tool to hone it off to be able to knock that edge off. But this is going to happen every time you use that cutting board. So titanium cutting board, although it's going to take a beating and it's never going to get cut marks in it, I'm not a big fan of them, and I wouldn't recommend them at all. They're not going to ruin your knife, but they're going to make your knives perpetually dull. So I would highly recommend not using a titanium cutting board. For plant-based eaters, I think wood is probably the definitive, and I always go towards a wood cutting board. If you're doing something like beets, I always have a red cutting board in my pile of cutting boards to be able to use. If you are, In a household that does do meats, I definitely would recommend having a plastic one as well too, and then replacing them often. Make sure that you're putting those plastic cutting boards in a dishwasher too to be able to manage to sanitize those so you don't have any cross contamination, and they're keeping you safe from any of the animal materials that might be on those cutting boards. Chicken being one of those really big factors you need to look out for. So wooden cutting boards are kind of my go-to, and for anything that might stain, I'm usually going to use like a red plastic cutting board. And even you can get microplastics that come from those. So if you're starting to see a lot of scratches on the cutting board, it might be time to replace them. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a very expensive cutting board or a cheap one you get from the dollar store. They're pretty much made the same way to the plastic ones. So it's okay to replace them every so often. So I hope that helps on your titanium cutting board question. Our next question is from Carmen. Hi, Chef. I'm doing the professional cook certification program and enjoying it. I've noted that a part dedicated to gluten free is very limited. Does Ruby offer courses dedicated to gluten free cooking? So, Karma, we don't have a specific course dedicated to gluten-free cooking. That is something we've talked about doing in the past, specifically just for people that are gluten-free. What we have tried to do is sprinkle in gluten-free alternatives for all the recipes that we put into them. Now, depending on the course, like we do a lot in the plant-based pro course on the gluten-free as well too. But we usually try to provide some sort of gluten-free option for a lot of the recipes. If it's not in the professional cook certification course, you might actually want to look in the search icon on the top of the Ruby platform to be able to type in a recipe for that. Or you can actually just type in gluten free and it'll come up with a huge amount of different recipes that are gluten free at the same time. So I highly recommend doing a quick search on the Ruby platform to be able to find those gluten free recipes. If there's something in particular that you're looking for that you're like, I really wish there was a gluten-free version of this, always feel free to write us, or write in the task, I'm looking for a gluten-free version of this, and we'll come to our instructors, and we'll do our best to be able to accommodate your needs for that. We've even in the past for the plant-based pro done a gluten-free seitan, which is pretty wild because seitan is gluten, is really what it is. So our wonderful chef instructor, Shar Nolan, who's a good friend, came up with that recipe, and it's brilliant. She did it out of a chickpea instead of using the gluten. And I was very speculative of it at first and tried it, and it was amazing. So we definitely put our best foot forward in trying to accommodate all kinds of diets and all kinds of eating habits. So if you do have questions about those, feel free to ask. But in the meantime, definitely use the search icon to be able to find the recipes to be able to best fit your needs. I hope that helps, Carmen. Now, Debbie is our next question here. I cook my chickpeas, not store bought. What is your advice? Should I remove the skin before preparing a dish? I don't know nutrition wise or effect on the finished product as far as smoothness, etc. So there's definitely two schools on this. A lot of people are religious about like, yes, I need to be able to remove all the hulls on the outside of my chickpeas before using them. I don't, to tell you the truth. I leave the skins on them, and I mean, I do. My kids eat a chickpea salad like probably twice a week for lunch, a packet in their school lunch, and I leave the skins on them all the time. It just adds, texture wise, it's not going to add a little anything at all. They just kind of disappear into it. But the other school is absolutely, they're like, yep, you need to be able to get rid of those skins because they look at the skins as something like almost like a popcorn kernel that gets stuck in your teeth, right? And I understand that and fully agree with it. It just doesn't bug me in particular. So I don't go through the process of doing it because I'm usually trying to make things pretty quickly for a family. So I leave the skins on and don't worry at all about it. And that's either using canned chickpeas or if I'm making them, out of dried chickpeas at the same time. Now, if you're growing them yourself and you can find the skin and it's easy to be able to take off, go ahead. Totally okay to be able to do that. But if you're in a hurry, don't worry about it because it's not really going to make that much of a difference. So I hope that helps for you, Debbie. And here's Shar herself actually asking a question. Shar, as we approach the end of 2025, other than shrub or kombucha, what kind of non-alcoholic beverages can you recommend? Cheers. So that's a great question for our holidays coming up here. So, a lot of times during the holidays, alcoholic beverages are kind of a norm, and for a lot of people, they don't drink alcohol. I myself, myself and my wife, we do drink, but we do take probably about half of the year off, kind of sections to be able to, just keep healthy at the same time. So we find ourselves a lot of times drinking non-alcoholic drinks, even though a lot of our friends are drinking. In Wisconsin, drinking is pretty popular, so a lot of our friends drink, even though we don't. So we come up with a lot of alternatives. Now, for the holiday wise, there are a lot of things you can think of that you can literally just get store bought that are non-alcoholic. Eggnog probably is one of those. There's a huge variety of different kinds of non-dairy eggnogs that are out there, and you can drink those just on their own, put them over ice. A great alternative to be able to do with those. If you want to do something like a fancier cocktail that looks really pretty, maybe try putting a little bit of seltzer water and cranberry juice and maybe a little ginger beer, the non-alcoholic ginger beer, and put that into a highballer with just like the ice. Put a little lime around the outside, and you have a nice cranberry cocktail for the holidays as well too. There are also a lot of products out there that are non-alcoholic to be able to make it appear that everybody's drinking the same thing, right? So there's a great wine out there called Null. So it's a red wine that's actually it has it's probably the most rated, red wine out there that's a non-alcoholic as well. Highly recommend that as well. When my mom was here over the summer, she bought us these things, which are the Curious brand, and it's Curious. This is number one. This is a Negroni. This is a non-alcoholic. It's a pomegranate Negroni, and it's basically they call it a booze-free cocktail, right? So you just pour this over ice and put your orange wedge over the top of it, and it's quite refreshing in the summertime on a hot day. So uh, there are a lot of different products to be able to pick out like that. But when you're making things yourself at home, I think just keeping it really simple, like the eggnog, the kind of looking at other versions of traditional alcoholic drinks. So, like I just mentioned, the eggnog, but also doing the cranberry drink, like I had mentioned too. You can do even things like a seltzer water and mint with a little bit of sugar in it to be able to get kind of that, kind of tropical drink as well too. I've seen a lot of versions of like mulled wines too, so you can actually do again a non-alcoholic wine and do a mulled wine with those with the different fruits in them, to be able to keep that kind of festive approach as well too. So I hope that's a couple good ideas for you and your family, Shar. And cheers to the end of the year. It's been a fantastic year of events. All right, our next question is from Lai. Ingredients are the same in both bread and pizza dough. Why does bread rise and pizza's flat? I made bread dough and I want to make pizza dough. Need to be sure the differences. So pizza dough should rise. We make pizza once a week at our house. It's like we have a tradition with our kids. It's like a pizza movie night, but we typically try to make our pizzas instead of just ordering them or getting them from the store or stuff like that. I mean, occasionally we'll get like frozen ones or something like that if we know we're going to have a busy week, but we make our pizza dough every single week. We also make bread at the house, and they are very similar recipes. But one of the processes is after we, make our pizza dough, we definitely make it rise, and then we spread it out in the pan that we're going to do. We usually do a, rectangular sized sheet pan, and then roll that out, and then put a damp towel over the top and let it rise as well. There's proofers you can get for it as well too, but more than likely we want to be able to get some of those nice poofy balls actually in it. In fact, my daughter will only eat the pizza that has the little balls on it that have a little char on it, in the pizza. So they should act pretty similar in both ways. It's just the the bread dough, you're keeping it kind of in the ball shape, right? Or the shape of which you want it. And it looks bigger and it's rising as it's doing that. The pizza dough is not going to rise as much, right? So if you have a thin layer of it like this, it's might, at most double kind of in size, except for a couple of those little bubbles that kind of come up. So you should get a rise out of both of those, no pun intended, to be able to get the best effect. If you're not getting the rise, you might want to check your yeast to make sure that's still activated. But yeah, I hope that helps. A fake. A lot of recipes don't offer a complete meal. What's your favorite way to fix vegan recipes that don't provide a protein or include all food groups? All right, so that's an interesting question because some recipes just aren't intended to be a complete meal, right? So if you have say a recipe for a chopped Mediterranean salad. That might be something that you can eat on its own, but it also might be something that you just have a side. If you have something like a glazed carrot, it's definitely not going to be a full meal. It's meant to be a side dish. So you might want to combine a couple different recipes to be able to make that complete meal, to be also get the nutrients that you're looking for out of everything. um, as far as recipes that don't provide enough protein, that is a very common theme in vegan and vegetarian meals. And I definitely challenge you to look up the protein on each of the ingredients that you're looking at, right? So a lot of people don't realize that vegetables have protein that's on their own, and then what the dietary, what you actually need for protein, and what your lifestyle is like, So the more active you are, the more protein you're probably going to need. If you are a bodybuilder, you definitely need a lot more protein than if work at a desk for a day job and you are not as active, or so, something like outside of work. So definitely not, saying, you definitely look up the type of how much protein you need for your own lifestyle, because I can't tell you. But if you're looking to add more protein to different things, look for some foods that have high proteins, right? So definitely look for those plant-based options that have high protein. If you're doing something like maybe like that Mediterranean salad I was talking about, you can easily add in just a little bit of cooked quinoa to that to be able to up your protein count. You can add something like a white cannellini bean or something to that Mediterranean salad if you want to be able to up the protein count on it as well. And then you can always sneak protein in different ways. Me being the father of two kids, I'm always looking for ways to be able to sneak protein into their food. So I will do a slur of different things or a slurry of different things to be able to make things, including um, you know, what's a good example? We did a butternut squash soup the other day where I did a traditional butternut squash soup, and then I pureed silken tofu with a little bit of lemon, and then did a drizzle basically on the top of it to be able to incorporate the protein in it, but also add a little bit of acid to the dish, and just the look of appeal for it. So, added something that wasn't quite in the recipe to be able to start with, but it definitely added a great protein source. I find tofu is actually one of my go-tos for my kids as well too. So, we will add things like tofu to like a miso soup, which is something that they love to have. And if I'm using, the veg stock that I get that I'm making on a regular basis, they're getting a lot of nutrients out of that. And then adding the protein to it as well too. So, short answer is, if the recipe is just like a side, you definitely need to be able to and add an additional recipe to be able to make it a complete meal. But if you're looking for recipes that would add more protein, think of other items, vegetables, that would have high protein, be your beans or your grains, even, broccoli and has a high protein content. Spinach can as well. And if you're doing different kinds of things that are packaged, always look at the protein count on the package to be able to be aware of how much protein you're getting in those. All right. I hope that helps you. Cecilia. Hi, Chef Dan. Do you have a good lentil burger recipe with added veggies that you can share with us today? I don't have an exact one I can like link you to, but there's one that I do pretty regularly, and it's a little bit by eye, to tell you the truth. So typically I'm going to start out with a mushroom and onion. So I'll chop up mushrooms and onions very, very fine and start by sautéing those into a pan. And then I will take cooked brown lentils, typically brown lentils, and add those to it, mash it up a little bit. Now, you can also add other things like you want to. If you want to do like a frozen spinach to it, just make sure that it's very, very well drained as you put it into it. Put the whole thing into a food processor with your lentils, your onions, your mushrooms, your spinach. And I usually add some different ingredients like a garlic powder and onion powder. Well, I guess you don't have to with the onions, but a garlic powder. I usually put a paprika into it as well too. If you want to have a little spice, you can put some chipotle or something into it, or red pepper flake, and then form them into the balls. Like I'll usually put in a little bit of breadcrumbs is one thing that I forgot to put in there, because that's usually the binder that helps kind of keep everything together. I'm usually going to put a little bit of liquid into this mix as it's kind of blending up as well. I usually do a soy sauce, and I might do a little aquafaba, which is just the water from the chickpeas. And I'll blend that all up and then form it into a patty. Now, the trick with these, though, is that you will want to make sure that they don't dry out too much. So you can either saute them in a pan or put them in the oven. I typically start in the oven to be able to get them cooked through. If they're drying out a little bit, just add a little bit of veg stock to it, flip it over to be able to make sure you're getting the moisture that's trapped in the inside. And usually the breadcrumbs will help to retain some of that moisture at the same time, too. So, not an exact recipe, so definitely kind of eyeball it. If I had to take a guess at kind of like what amounts I'm putting in, it's usually about 2 cups of brown lentils, probably about a half an onion, and maybe a little less than a cup of mushroom. And then, again, cook those off, blend them all in. I usually don't let the mushrooms, I'll let them release the liquid, but I usually don't let them dry out basically in the pan, so they keep some of the moisture in it as well. And then probably a half a cup of breadcrumb-ish, as the binder, and then smaller amounts on your tamari and your aquafaba, and then season to taste as you want to. Hope that helps. Judith, I've been looking for a recipe that I thought I learned on one of my Ruby courses, the butternut squash cashew with fresh sage and mac for the mac and cheese, sweet and savory profile. I looked ahead on this one, Judith, and I found you the recipe. I'm going to have Patrick post it down at the bottom here, so it should come right up for you. There it is, the baked macaroni and cheese recipe. It's definitely a crowd favorite. I've served this one in the past, and it is quite good. I actually love the fresh sage on it too. It's really nice to be able to just add kind of at the end of it, and definitely ups that culinary profile. So enjoy, Judith, and I hope it goes well for you. Mary, I've started a YouTube channel to share plant based recipes and cooking tips to help people learn how to incorporate more plants to their diet. Congratulations, Mary. That's great. If I cite Ruby on my YouTube channel, may I share some of your tips? Absolutely, Mary. As long as you credit us and maybe just put a link to Ruby at the bottom there, especially if you're doing plant based, maybe just link to the plant based professional class or one of the plant based courses, so people are going to the right place on Ruby as well too. But yeah, that's one of the great things is we train thousands and thousands of chefs, and we are expecting you to be able to take your knowledge and go out. And I love it when people share them because when we get more people getting more aware about cooking in the kitchen. So thank you for sharing the info and definitely credit us. Um, so that's fantastic. Good luck on the new channel, Mary. Jessica, can any vinaigrette be used as a marinade as well, or is there a substantial difference, something I should take into consideration? So yeah, any vinaigrette can can have a lot of things in it. So it really kind of depends on what the vinaigrette or what's in the vinaigrette, right? So most vinaigrettes you could probably use as a marinade. Like we do one on our courses is the balsamic vinegar, as a lot of people use as a or the balsamic vinaigrette that a lot of people use as a marinade for like mushrooms and stuff like that. And that works out wonderfully. But there's certain ingredients you might want to look out for. And if particularly if you're cooking, right? So if you're doing like a raw dish, most often any of those will totally work fine. But if you're cooking something, there are a couple ingredients you want to watch out for, particularly raw garlic, right? So if you're using raw garlic in a recipe or in a vinaigrette, if there's like little bits of the garlic and they're cooking on a surface, like say if you sear it or something, that garlic will cook faster than everything else, and it could make a little bitterness into the recipe. So uh, you have to kind of think about what is going to be if you're cooking you have to think about what's going to cook faster in those, right? So that's probably one of the few exceptions that I can think of as far as what you can add into a vinaigrette that might alter the flavor a little bit if you're cooking it. Not to say that you can't use the garlic in the recipe, you just want to make sure that you're paying attention to that for flavor. So yeah, that's about as far as I can go on that one because any vinaigrette, there's a lot of different kinds out there, but more often than not, you can typically use it as a marinade as well. And our last one is from Mitch. What are your favorite ways to incorporate tofu into plant-based meals and snacks? Thanks, Chef Dan. So let's see some of my favorites because I use them all. I use tofu in so many different ways, and one of the probably most popular ones for like my family is just doing marinade on it and doing a roast on it. Right, so we'll just basically marinate it, and it's typically like what I do is just kind of a standard recipes. I'll use a dark soy sauce, a tamari, and I'll put in just like a drop of liquid smoke. Um, I might put in a little vegan fish sauce. If you don't have vegan fish sauce, you can use a vegan Worcestershire sauce, just a touch of it. And then I'll slice my tofu into kind of strips, put it into that marinade, add a little bit of water because it typically won't cover it the whole way. And I also don't want it to be unbelievably salty. So it's usually like my marinade is probably a quarter of all those other ingredients, and the rest is water. So that way it's not really, really salty because dark soy sauce can get there. And then I will basically soak that and then put it in the oven, take it out of the marinade, put it in the oven on a sheet pan at 350 for about 20 minutes. And that is one of the recipes that my family goes to constantly. Now, I will riff off of that recipe all the time. Like I do a Greek dish that's kind of like a very lemon forward, it's basically kind of the same thing, but the marinade doesn't have as much soy. It'll have just a little bit of tamari, a lot of lemon juice, and I'll put oregano in it. Um, as well, and do the same baking on that. It's really light and airy. It's good for roasted vegetables too, or you do it as a side. That same marinade, if you actually just take a lighter tofu, like a softer tofu, and you do a lot of lemon juice and oregano, and I usually do a little bit of olive oil into it as well. Nutritional yeast, a little bit of salt. That's a great feta recipe. So a vegan feta. So if you're just cubing it, it's great to be able to put on top of salads as well. I don't usually cook that one off. But you could, of course. Yeah, that's a pretty popular one as well. But just doing the baked tofu is probably the most popular with our family. My kids will just eat that, on bread with a little bit of mayo and pickle, just as a sandwich, and it's one of their favorite lunches. Quite honestly, I'd like it if they ate less mayo on it, but at least they're getting their protein and their fat, I guess. Um, but what are some other ways? The taco salads, or or tofu scrambles. Sorry, my words are getting mixed up here. The tofu scrambles are a uh, pretty big staple in our house as well too, and that's just basically doing a scramble to taste like scrambled eggs. And I'll usually use a little bit of black salt, some nutritional yeast, some turmeric, and I usually saute some onions, mushrooms, peppers before that as well too, and then put the tofu in to be able to get it into that, and crumble the tofu in to be able to get that same texture, and serve it on tacos, or on a taco shell with some either salsa or hot sauce. And it's a pretty, again, a big staple in our house, kind of a go-to to be able to use tofu as well. Now there are a slew of other ways that I'd be able to use tofu too. That depending on the dish and what you're doing, I might slice it really thin and just cook it in a pan and put it into like a japchae or something, like a Korean noodle dish or something like that, with a lot of this thinly sliced vegetables, and do a nice sauce on that as well. Um, and there's just so many different ways to be able to include it. And again, tofu is one of our family favorites. That the kids love it. It's approachable to them. They know how to cook it themselves too, which is great. So yeah, it's definitely a great medium for flavor because it starts basically with no flavor. So you can add a lot of things to it to incorporate it and make it into other things. My wife often will use it in like a crumble to do like a bolognese and like a pasta dish or something like that. We use it in lasagna. We do it on our pizza nights. So I'll do a tofu ricotta. We'll do a kind of a soft tofu and do like a lemon, nutritional yeast salt kind of mixture, and kind of hand mush it all together, and then kind of drizzle it over the top of your pizza and do a ricotta. So a little bit of basil and tomato with that, quite good. So it works out really well. Um, so yeah, there's a slew of different ways to be able to use it, but those are probably some of my favorites I personally use in our own house. So that's our last question for the day today, guys. Thank you for joining us for our live events for the year. Make sure to tune in next year. We'll be having some great events, including one that Charnolan and I will be doing on how to throw a cooking course for friends, family, or for business as well. So both Charnolan and I have a very long track record of doing live cooking classes. Between the two of us, we probably taught maybe 8 to 10,000 classes, to, not together, but separately. It's we made a career out of it for a very long time as instructors. Charnolan's still doing it very actively now, where she's doing a lot of courses or a lot of classes as well. I'm not doing them as much, but it should be a great conversation. So make sure to tune in. And if you are preparing for the holidays, make sure to check out our holiday guide. We've got both a plant based version and a traditional version where our instructors came together to be able to find some great recipes to utilize for the holidays. It's a pretty, reasonable price too. It basically comes with a PDF guide and a little mini course to be able to have to be able to go into the holidays. And it's just great ideas for the holidays, for plant-based or for traditional. Or if it's traditional, we also include some plant-based recipes in the traditional course too. So happy holidays to everyone, and keep warm and happy cooking. We'll see you soon.